Richmond, welcome again, or all of Virginia, welcome again to Let's Talk Music Richmond. We have a very special guest with us tonight. We always say all our guests are special, but this guy is special because he's like he's a Richmond legend. Not too many people get real top hit records in their lives that they can say that they had a top-notch hit record that people are still talking about 55 years later.
That's close to 60.
60 years later? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, that's 60.
Charles, I get to introduce tonight to our listeners. And so we're talking to Reverend Dr. Ray Smith Jr. tonight. How you doing, Ray? Senior, I'm sorry.
Ray Senior. It is an honor and a pleasure to have Ray with us. He is part of exactly what our intentions are, to talk about music and the music makers of Richmond, Virginia. And Ray is one of those who led the way, pioneered it, at least in my time, the possibilities of what being a performer could be in Richmond, Virginia. And he sat on a mantelpiece as somebody to try to reach up and grab and achieve and catch on to that coattail, because at that time, they were really hot.
Everybody I know from back in the day always brags on his group, and they brag on the success of that record. Ray, tell us one thing. Where did you grow up in Richmond, and where did you go to school?
Grew up in Church Hill on 1200 block of North 26th Street. Started out at George Mason, and from George Mason to Armstrong, because we could go to Armstrong during that time in the 7H.
Were you musically inclined at George Mason?
Yes, from my father. He sang with the Harmonizing Four, and he played guitar, and that's where our musical talents came from.
Who was your choir director, instructor at George Mason at that time?
You know, I don't remember, Charles. I really remember one teacher, Miss Ellis.
Time you got to Armstrong, do you remember who the choir director was there?
Right. Harris Savage was the choir director, and Pop Williams was the band director.
Maurice Williams.
What year was your graduating class?
1959.
Did you start singing in groups and stuff while you were at school in Armstrong or at George Mason?
The first group I sang with was some guys out of Virginia Union University. And that was Buzzy Williams and a guy named Grant from Martinsville, another brother from Tennessee. And I sang with them for a minute, not long. And then that's when I started singing with the Cherokees.
So Ray, after the Cherokees, what did you do? And did you go to Union or?
Yeah, I attended Union for 1 year. Went there in 1959.
Did you sing in the choir in it? You doing the choir music there?
No, none.
Okay. So what was next, Ray?
That was still with the Cherokees, but we changed some of the members.
Okay, a personnel change.
And that's when we got Paul Burnett, Earl Christian, Thomas Eldridge, and Nathaniel Muffin. Call him Muffin.
Okay, yes, so what came after the Cherokees?
That's when we sang at the arena.
After y'all sang at the arena, what happened?
Well, Benny King said he was going to talk to a record company in New York. And you know how you say, okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah, good. Thank you. Whoa.
And guess what? He did. That was in 1960. And I was at Virginia Union. And Benny King called Paul, I think, or Muffin, and told him that we needed to come to New York to sing for this record company. I couldn't go. So just 4 of them went. And they sang for the people. It was Jerry and Gene Swartz at Laurie Records.
Okay.
They had never had a black group. They had all white groups. And they gave them a couple of songs, and they came back home. I still couldn't go. And they actually went back and recorded Little Lonely One without me. Little Lonely One did well in New York only. And they wanted us to record again. And we all went back to New York, and they gave us 2 songs, A Little Bit of Soap and The Way You Look Tonight, which was an old standard. The Little Bit of Soap, we didn't like it at first because it was, to us, hillbilly. Right. But we worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. And then we went back to New York, and they had already had the music done, the instrumentals done prior to us even getting there.
Yes.
And we really rehearsed again in the subways because we liked the way the sound was then. So we went to RCA Victor Studio, and that's where we recorded A Little Bit of Soap and Little Lonely One. But it was just different for us to hear all the strings and all the entire orchestra.
Yes.
Hear the production.
Man, that was something.
Yeah, the music production. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You know, we weren't used to that. They we recorded, and while we were there, they gave us a manager. And you know, that time we didn't care. They gave us a contract, and we brought the contract back. Let an attorney here look at it. He said, it looks okay. We didn't care what it looked like because we'd already recorded, and we figured we were going to be on our way. And it turned out that A Little Bit of Soap took off. Well, overseas, it went to #1 in Germany.
Well, on the R&B chart, it went to #7.
7, that's right. That's right.
And on the pop chart, it went to #12.
12, right.
We know that after the Jarmels, other than the stuff you've been doing with the Jarmels again since your heyday, did you sing in any other groups after that?
Yeah, I sang with Joe Jefferson and Bill Spradley.
So you were a part of that Nat Turner Rebellion time?
No, the Impacts, right?
Before Nat Turner's Rebellion.
So that was the Impacts with Stacey Henry, right?
That was the original Impacts. The Sahara Club Impacts was Little Joe, Spradley, Thomas, Paul, and Earl.
Oh, okay.
So we were the Impacts at Bill Jones Peppermint Lounge. That was with the Mustangs band.
All right. So who did you sing with after the Impact? After you sang with Lil Joe?
It was me and Bobby Ghost and Thelma, because she was singing with the
Thelma Fields.
Yeah.
Thelma Fields. Right.
Yeah.
That name came up the other day too, because we were talking about
Yes, indeed.
We were talking about Oscar Fields, her brother.
Right, her brother.
Yeah, Mr. James Brown himself.
Yes, sir. He is.
So here's the other question I want to ask you. Out of all the things and all the places you all did, the Jarmels, and how big A Little Bit of Soap was and record it was, what experience did you have that from your time in the music industry that still has an impact on you now?
The Apollo Theater.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
Yeah, the Apollo Theater in December 1961. We did 10 days in the Apollo.
Wow.
For the Christmas show, Jocko's Christmas show.
Oh, Jocko.
And that ran during the Christmas holidays through the new year. And the most memorable thing is the midnight show. You do a midnight show, and you know, you always heard that, man, that midnight show was tough. The people were tough. We had talked right before the midnight show. We said this will be the best show we've ever done. And we went out there, and I sang For Your Love. That was a slow ballad. And at the end, there's a real high part that I sang. And when I hit that the high note, the people stood up and applauded.
All right.
And
standing ovation at the Apollo.
Standing ovation
at the Apollo Theater.
Yes, sir.
That is something to remember.
Probably one of the hardest standing ovations anybody in the world
yes,
can get.
Sir. Yes, sir.
That means, look, that means you were doing something right, because
exactly.
That means you were doing something right, bro.
Yes, sir.
Who else? Now tell me this. That's a awesome memory. Who else was on the show with you all?
Chuck Jackson.
Oh yeah.
Jarmels.
Oh yeah.
Tammy Terrell.
Wow.
Right.
She was Tammy Montgomery then.
Okay.
And that was the show. It might have been one other guy on there.
So who would have been the headliner?
Chuck Jackson.
Well, tell us what you're doing right now, and tell us about this. I heard something about a book. Tell us about this book.
Yeah, it's a book that I wrote, and the name of it is Then There Was One.
Then There Was One. Wow.
And it starts out with at the Apollo. And we then it talks about my family.
Right.
Where my father came from.
Where did your father come from?
Andrew,
South Carolina. Okay, we're familiar with it.
Let me ask you this, Ray. You grew up in a house where your father was with undoubtedly one of the renowned gospel groups of that area. Your brothers are well known as musicians as well. Growing up in that environment, how do you think that contributed to your choice to pursue the music business?
Well, by my father singing with the RVA, and we attending church every Sunday. That's where it all started. And my brothers, they took piano lessons. In fact, all of us did. But after maybe a year, I just told my parents I just don't like the piano. And I stopped taking piano lessons, but I continued to sing. And it's because of the talent that my father had, because Donald, he's got perfect pitch. That's the youngest brother, right?
How many boys are there?
It's 3 of us, 3 boys, 2 girls. And Lonnie, he continued with playing piano. So did Donald, but Donald learned how to play the flute and everything else.
Yeah, Donald's an extremely talented flutist.
He really is.
I was hoping to be able to get Donald on here one day, and maybe you can help us get Donald, because Donald's a very important part of the music business history of Richmond, but Donald has not come back to Richmond much for years, right? Or doesn't spend a lot of time here?
He spent very little time here after he graduated in 1961. He's been in New York ever since. Where he went to University of Illinois, and after that he moved to New York. Right now he is in a nursing home in New York.
Okay.
So he's doing good.
Well, good. Let him know we want to talk to him.
Okay.
Because his flute playing and singing,
right,
were renowned when he was working with your brother, Lionel Liston Smith.
That's exactly right.
And Donald's closer in age to us, to Charles and I. Donald, but you say he finished high school at 61, so he's still older than we are.
Right.
I didn't know he was that much older. I would think he's like 20 years older than me.
I knew about him, but I don't think I ever saw Donald perform.
Well, see, Ray, you have helped us tremendously. Like my conversations with your brother Lonnie has helped, because Lonnie finished in 57. You finished in 59, and Donald finished in 61.
61.
And then Lonnie and Donald left and had careers away, and you stayed here and had a career here. all of you all had extremely successful careers in the music business, but I hate to tell you this. And forgive me for this. It may sound like an insult, but your daddy was still the baddest sucker out the whole group.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He was the man.
Yeah.
I was
Now,
trying
you can't go without mentioning the Harmonizing Four.
to give Ray his shot at the limelight, because once people start talking about the Harmonizing Four, they saying, "What's your name again, Ray?" You know, shoot.
So now, Ray, now that we're on the Harmonizing Four, like you said, you were in the church every week. You must have seen many a show with your dad at the Harmonizing Four.
Yeah.
You must have went to many facilities and saw many other acts performing in those concert venues with the Harmonizing Four. Those kind of environments on a singer like yourself, those kind of surroundings of being around those other singers, those powerhouse singers, the ones that don't need that microphone, the ones that can go to work in a wooden building and get the kind of rhythm that you just can't get on stage with a carpet. You know, you must have been around all of that.
I was. In fact, we were. You know, and I remember Sam Cooke, because Sam used to come over to the house whenever they played here in Richmond or sang here in Richmond. He came over to the house just to eat my mother's food.
Yes, indeed.
Sam Cooke was in my
That's the
house.
stories I'm talking about.
That's
Yes,
Sam
sir.
Cooke was in Miss Smith's house to come
That's
get some
right.
home cooking
In
That's
Churchill.
in church.
Yes, sir.
But see, here's the problem, Charles. The problem is that Ray was around real singers. And
Yes.
the history actually says that when his daddy got with the Harmonizing Four, because they were old school kind of before Daddy Smith got with him, to become a more upbeat, popular type group. And Ray, before we get too far deep in the woods on this, when I found out that your father's group and them were good buddies with Rosetta Tharpe,
Yes, sir. Yes,
and
sir.
that Rosetta Tharpe came and lived in Richmond and hung out with your dad and them.
Yeah.
And then I think they sang at her wedding, or did they sing?
Sang at her wedding at Griffith Stadium in Washington, D.C. It
Rosetta
was
Tharpe
over
got married at the stadium, Charles.
25,000 people.
Whoa, what a wedding party.
And guess who promoted that wedding?
Who?
Remember Irvin Fell's Greatest
Irvin.
Show of Stars? Biggest Show of Stars?
Biggest show stars.
That's who did it. Irvin Fell's.
He promoted her wedding as an event.
Yes, sir.
Do you
Yes,
remember
sir.
around what year? Were you there? I mean, were you old
No,
enough to
I don't
remember?
remember what year it was. But
Okay.
I wasn't there anyway.
So-
I met her she's living Northside on
Right.
Rose Avenue.
On Rose
Rose Avenue.
The whole reason we're telling this story is because there's so much information about Richmond's music history that nobody knows. And when we started, Charles and I started sharing these stories with ourselves, I tell you who a good friend of ours and like our big brother was, and we used to have to keep him straight half the time, it was Joe Carter.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, and everybody else remember Joe Carter. Joe
Would
Carter.
sell every band in town.
Joe Carter was advocate for Richmond, Virginia, to the day he died.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
Joe,
For every musical entertainment there, he was an advocate for every performer.
everybody that came out of Richmond was better than anybody else anywhere in the world,
Yeah.
according to Joe Carter. And that's what
That's true.
Charles and I loved about Joe, is that Joe was a person who believed in his community and
Yes.
believed in the musicians and believed in the artists. He talked to me about the Jarmels so doggone much, I thought I knew the Jarmels myself. When we were coming up and Charles and I had bands, and my band Trussell, Charles had 10 bands. Ujima, Anglo-Saxon Band, Silk, Brother Love, and a few other bands that were Richmond's most popular bands. But Joe used to tell us about you guys. And then, of course, everybody who knows anything about music history should know that the Harmonizing Four was from Richmond.
Yes.
And the Harmonizing Four was one of the biggest, most successful gospel groups of that era.
Everybody knew it.
Yeah, and when you start talking about the Five Blind Boys, Mississippi, and not long after that, you're going to talk about the Harmonizing Four.
That's right.
No doubt about it.
And that top 5 quartets in the United States of America, you cannot name the top 5 gospel quartets without the Harmonized Four being one of them. I can't remember. I don't even think I can name 5. But you know what I'm saying is I know the Harmonizing Four was one.
Right.
And for you to have been in that arena, because see, you were about 7, 8 years old, 9 years old when they were really in their heyday. I mean, in the late 40s.
They were in their heyday for so long. Clement played guitar with them.
Yeah.
Clement Burnett, when we were in high school, I think that would have been in 65 when he started playing with the Harmonizing Four. Somewhere along that line, 65, 66. And then Hezekiah Monroe started playing with him. I think his name Mason
Monroe played with him too. Jesse Pryor.
Jesse played with him.
Jesse played with him when he was.
Jesse was the first one, I think.
So the Harmonizing Four time frame, in my mind, ran from the mid 50s all the way through the late 60s.
Actually, they started. It was in the 40s. Okay, it was in the 40s. But here's the reason I said that.
Well, what I'm saying is, in my mind, as I know them, I heard that name from about the mid 50s all the way through to the late 60s. I knew about the Smiths. I knew 26th Street is where they were. I lived on Mechanicsville Pike. You know, just in the 1300 block, they were in the 1200 block. I knew where they were. I passed that in Good Armstrong every day, walking up the street, you know.
Yeah.
So we knew about these guys. They were legends at Armstrong High School, Ray and the group, because they'd already had the hit records out, you know. So, you know, we all knew about them. So the Harmonizing Four just kind of rolled that whole train. I mean, they were there forever, it seemed to me.
The only reason I say that is because when I started hearing that they sang for Franklin Roosevelt's funeral, and
that I did not know. That I did not know.
They sang for and they had sang at the White House. You see what I'm saying? So we're talking about pre-Harry Truman.
Yeah.
See, so I'm telling you where they when the
you talking about 47. You talking about the time I was born. You talking about 47, 48.
That's why I said mid to late 40s, early 50s. When you asked to sing for the president and you asked to sing at the president's funeral, you was high cotton at that time.
Yeah.
You are
high cotton.
I don't know. I kind of say when you singing for the president and at his funeral, you kind of reached a plateau up there where it's kind of hard to beat that brother.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why that's invitational only. That's invitational only.
And Eleanor Roosevelt requested them.
That's who did it. She really did.
And they influenced Rosetta Tharpe to move to Richmond.
Right.
So when you're talking about, a lot of people don't know, and I hope when they listen to this and look at this show, that when we say Rosetta Tharpe, we're talking about the woman that's credited with influencing every rock and roll guitar player that's ever lived.
That is correct.
Every rock and roll guitar player that's ever lived worships the ground that Rosetta Tharpe walked.
During that time when you first started performing around the Richmond area, prior to the hit record, when you were performing, where were you performing? Can you name some of those facilities? Some of those clubs?
Gregory's, Martin Inn.
And you said earlier the Richmond Arena.
And then the only other one, you had Loving Union Hall over South Side. Then you had Union Hall on North 26th Street, Rendezvous East, because we sang on, Jerry Butler was there, and we sang on the show with him.
Well, Ray, you are such a important part of Richmond history, and you, believe it or not, was so important for us to tie in because, like you said, your father, and let's say your father, we say that his peak time was in the early 50s, maybe middle 50s. And then you all came around in the 60s and up, and then we go with, we talked to Plunky and Jose, and we tied in the 60s, right? And then Charles and I, our groups and stuff dominated in the early 70s. Early 70s. And then we had our little 10-year run, 70s. So a lot of this stuff goes in 10-year cycles.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
5 and 10-year cycles, yes.
So the thing that Charles was talking about the endearment to Richmond and the music community is, I always tell people, even though I didn't grow up playing music here, I was born in Richmond, so I get some credit with that.
Okay.
But what happened, Ray, was I was fortunate enough to teach at Peabody 1 year. And in the middle 80s, I got a call from Nelson Lawson to come teach here in Richmond. And I spent most of the next 30 years working in Richmond Public Schools. So I taught school for years, and then for 20 years, I was an administrator. And in doing that, I had to do as much as I could to look out for music. Right. And you know what I'm saying is, when, you know, you're a musician, you had to look out like Joe Kennedy.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like Nat Lee.
Yeah.
You know, I started naming all the musicians who were so important to the Richmond community who ended up being administrators. You know what I'm saying? Like Bill Joyner.
Yeah.
Bill Joyner.
Johnny Payton. You got to put Johnny Payton in there.
Yeah.
And guess what else? Bill Joyner sang with the Cherokees.
Oh, he did.
Yes, sir.
Did he really?
Wow.
He sang with the Cherokees, and when he left, that's when we got Muffin and Paul and all of them, because Bill went to Johnson C. Smith.
Went away to college.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, he came back and ended up being Charles. I don't know. You know, Bill used to promote shows also.
He used to promote a lot of gospel shows.
Yeah.
Because I remember the Tremaine Hawkins show I did with him, and one or two others I think I worked with him.
Did you know he was principal at Armstrong?
By the time I left, he became assistant principal there. But
Okay.
when I had that sound company in Richmond, we worked a lot of his events.
Do you know Bill is still alive or not, Ray?
Yes, he's still alive.
Is that right?
We might have to try to get old Bill Joyner on here.
That would be good.
We talked to Charles and I talked to August Moon last week, and we've talked to the great Jose on here. We had a great interview with the great Jose.
Jose, a lot of knowledge.
Man, the Fox family. He told us about the Foxes. They were singing way back in the day.
Yeah.
And his sister.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, his sister. When you started talking about the Sahara Club, you got to remember that Ray remembers when that was a bowling alley.
Yes, sir.
Before it became a nightclub. So you talking about old school. You talking about old school Richmond legacy here, like yourself, Charles. And Ray, we surely appreciate you coming on and talking to us. And we hope to be able to interview Donald and Lonnie sometime in the future, because they both have a pleasure. They have a story to tell too. And
Rick,
you all continue to be blessed. And if there's anything else I can do to help you all, just let me know. You got my number.
All right. We thank you for being here, Ray. We really do.
Thank you all too.
God bless you and have a good one, brother. Take care.